In the spring of 1941, the British Mediterranean Fleet and the Italian Regia Marina clashed off Cape Matapan. It was the largest fleet battle in the European theatre during the Second World War, and also one of the most one-sided. This episode is brought to you by CuriosityStream, a subscription streaming service that offers thousands of documentaries and non-fiction titles from some of the world's best filmmakers. Get unlimited access for just $2.99 a month or the discounted price of $11.99 a year. You can also get 30 days for free at curiositystream.com/historiograph with the promo code Historigraph. More on this later. By March 1941, the British War Cabinet had taken the decision to support Greece against Axis invasion, with an expeditionary force shipped from Egypt. Close protection for the troop ships was provided by Vice Admiral Henry Pridham Whipple's Force B. Britain's capital ships in the region lay at Alexandria under Admiral Andrew Cunningham. As the end of March drew close, British intelligence at Bletchley Park intercepted a series of Italian naval signals that included requests for information on the position of British convoys. Sensing danger, Admiral Cunningham ordered all convoys suspended and told Pridham Whipple to bring his cruisers west of Crete by daybreak on March 28th. If the Italian fleet was coming out, a chance at engaging it was not to be passed up. At 12:30 on March 27th, an RAF Sunderland flying boat operating from Malta spotted an Italian cruiser division east of Sicily. This was the confirmation Cunningham needed to bring his own battle fleet out, departing Alexandria at 7 p.m. that evening with 3 battleships, an aircraft carrier and 8 destroyers. The Italian fleet which Cunningham was steaming out to try and meet was much larger, but possessed less heavy firepower. Its prize asset was the battleship Vittorio Veneto, a modern ship of more than 40,000 tons, carrying 9 15-inch guns and capable of a top speed of 30 knots, far faster than the old Queen Elizabeth-class battleships that Cunningham possessed. Veneto was escorted by 4 destroyers and carried the Italian commander-in-chief, Admiral Angelo Iachino. Iachino's force was joined by 2 further groups. Vice Admiral Sansonetti led the formation that had been spotted from the air earlier, with 3 heavy cruisers and 3 destroyers. The rest of the Italian cruiser forces were commanded by Vice Admiral Cattaneo, with 4 heavy cruisers, 2 light cruisers and 6 destroyers. The Italian fleet had come out to hunt for Allied convoys after pressure from their German allies, who were keen that the flow of British troops to Greece be interrupted. German intelligence had told the Italians that Cunningham had only 1 operational battleship available to respond. Admiral Cunningham, for his part, was determined simply to find the enemy as quickly as possible and get as close to them as he could. He was sceptical of the effectiveness of long-range gunnery battles. According to the fleet's gunnery officer, Commander Geoffrey Barnett, Cunningham had once argued, "The right range for any ship of the Mediterranean fleet, from a battleship to a submarine to engage an enemy ship with gunfire, is point blank, at which range even a gunnery officer cannot miss." As dawn broke on March 28, 1941, both fleets had no idea of each other's positions and strengths. This fog was broken at 6:43 a.m. when Vittorio Veneto's spotter aircraft found the cruisers of Force B. Guessing that their presence must signify that a convoy was nearby, Admiral Iachino ordered his fleet to increase speed. In the next hour, aircraft from HMS Formidable made sighting reports of cruisers and destroyers close to Force B's position. Both Cunningham and Pridham Whipple thought that it was the Royal Navy's own ships that had been spotted by their own aircraft. This illusion was dispelled at 5 minutes to 8 when Force B's flagship HMS Orion spotted the cruiser Trieste, leading the Central Italian group under Vice Admiral Sansonetti. Force B was quickly faced with 3 onrushing Italian cruisers that were not only more powerful with 8-inch guns, but faster too. Turning Force B swiftly away to the southeast as they came under fire, Pridham Whipple began to try and draw his opponents towards the British battle fleet. Sansonetti pursued Force B until shortly before 9 a.m, before he suddenly turned away to the northwest. Not wanting to lose visual contact with the enemy, Pridham Whipple mirrored this turn, shadowing Sansonetti at long range. The British cruisers were unaware that they were now being led into a trap. Shortly before 11 a.m, Vittorio Veneto came suddenly into view from the northeast, opening fire on Force B from long range. The British Vice Admiral quickly grasped the extreme danger his ships were now in, caught between 2 powerful enemy groups. He signalled for smoke to be made and for his squadron to turn away at the fastest speed each ship could maintain. Away to the east, Admiral Cunningham read the signals Cripple was sending to his squadron with a mixture of anxiety and excitement. The kind of action Force B had just taken could mean only one thing. The Italian battle fleet had been spotted. Cunningham pressed his fleet west at all possible speed and reached for the only way he could influence events before his slow battleships arrived, the aircraft carrier Formidable. Formidable had already flown off a striking force in case it was needed, and just before 11:30 a force of 6 Fairey Albacores led by Lieutenant Commander Gerald Saunt moved in to attack Vittorio Veneto. All of their torpedoes missed, but nonetheless had the effect of forcing Aquino to break off the pursuit. Sansonetti's cruisers were forced to do the same when at midday they were attacked by 3 Swordfish aircraft launched from an airfield in Crete. By 1 PM, Force B's retreat had brought them in visual contact of the British battle fleet, but there was no sign of the Italian. The cruisers had thrown up so much smoke during their escape that by the time it had cleared, the Italians had vanished. Admiral Cunningham was now faced with the task of trying to bring to battle an Italian fleet that he did not know the location of and that was faster than him. The information Admiral Aquino had on his opponents was even sketchier. Intelligence indicated that HMS Formidable plus 1 escorting battleship had left port and was the source of the aircraft that had just attacked his fleet, but not much else was known. Aquino guessed that Formidable had only recently left port that morning and was probably at least 170 miles away. Even so, the threat of air attack was enough to head for home, knowing that a single lucky hit could leave the Vittorio Veneto a sitting duck. Cunningham's first problem, that of finding Vittorio Veneto, was resolved just after 3 PM, when aerial contact was regained. A second attack wave from Formidable was directed in, led by Lieutenant Commander John Dalyell Stead. By chance, the attack coincided with a raid by 6 RAF Blenheim high-altitude bombers, who were the focus for much of the Italian fleet's attention in the seconds before the torpedo bombers began their attack run. When fire switched to the Albacores, it was intense, but Dalyell Stead pressed his attack. Even after his 2 wingmen dropped their torpedoes at what was already a short distance, the leading Albacore continued to charge for the flagship. Finally, less than 1,000 yards from Vittorio Veneto, the torpedo was released, before the Albacore was overwhelmed by fire and crashed into the sea. An emergency turn away had been ordered aboard Vittorio Veneto, but too late. The torpedo crunched into the arse of the ship, letting in thousands of tons of water in short order. By 3:30, the engines had stopped. Frantic damage control work enabled Vittorio Veneto's engines to be restarted before too long, but the flagship's speed was greatly reduced. This was the chance Cunningham had been waiting for. A third airstrike was ordered for dusk, and Force B was detached to gain visual contact with the Italians as quickly as possible. By 5:45, not only had Formidable flown off 6 fresh torpedo bombers, but 2 more Swordfish had been launched from Crete. They were joined in the air by Warspite's own spotter plane, which was catapulted in an urgent attempt to find the Italian fleet again before nightfall. Orders were given for destroyers to prepare to chase down the Italians for a night torpedo attack. At 6:31, Warspite's spotter reported the position of the Italian fleet, joining the Swordfish from Crete in holding station around it. By this time, the Italians had consolidated into a single group, with the damaged Vittorio Veneto in the centre and destroyers and cruisers arrayed in a protective screen on all sides. Still believing that any British capital ships were miles away, Aquino's concern was defending against further air attack, and any attempted destroyer attacks overnight. At 7:30, the third and final British air attack of the day began. 8 torpedo bombers streaking in from the east, with Aquino's fleet silhouetted against the western sky. A tremendous barrage of anti-air fire greeted them, that was so fierce it forced many to break off and come in individually from other angles. In the gloom, it was difficult for the pilots to tell the larger Italian ships apart, especially while hurtling through a maelstrom of tracer fire as they tried to line themselves up for a torpedo run. Most pilots thought they had engaged the Vittorio Veneto, but this was rarely the case. At 7:46, the last aircraft remaining, piloted by Lieutenant CPC Williams, released its torpedo and hit the heavy cruiser Polar square amidships. Polar quickly lost its engines and all electrical power, pulling out of line and coming to a halt. In the confusion, the Italian fleet steamed on oblivious. Aquino did not receive a signal reporting the damage to Polar until half an hour later. As it was now dark and there was no chance of further air attacks, Aquino felt confident in detaching at 8:38 the remainder of Cattaneo squadron to aid the stricken cruiser. The British, meanwhile, had no idea of the results of the last airstrike. It was much too dark to observe the hit on Pola directly, and the aircraft that participated had been diverted to land in Crete rather than risking a night landing aboard Formidable. Shortly after 8:30, Cunningham detached 8 destroyers to hunt down the Italians and launch a torpedo attack. The force under Captain Philip Mack was told that the Italians were 33 miles ahead, travelling at 13 knots. This was an estimate based off the first report from Warspite's spotter plane several hours earlier. In fact, Aquino's fleet was travelling 19 knots and had been doing so for at least 3 hours. At 8:30, they were actually 57 miles distant from the British. This miscalculation meant that Mack's destroyers would spend the next few hours chasing shadows. At 8:40, radar on board Force B's HMS Ajax detected a stopped ship 4 miles to their west. Cunningham was informed of its location and Pridham Whipple pushed on, still eager to catch up with the rest of the enemy fleet. The British battle fleet set a course towards the unknown ship for closer investigation. At 10:10, HMS Valiant, the only one of Cunningham's battleships to be fitted with radar, was close enough to report the stopped ship 9 miles away. Cunningham, in defiance of conventional practice for handling battleships at night, turned his fleet together towards the unknown. According to SWC Pack, such a turn towards was unprecedented in a night action, for the drill had always been for the battle fleet to turn away if there was the possibility of being subjected to a destroyer attack. By 10:20, Pola was just 4.5 miles away. Guns were loaded and trained on the stricken cruiser. Suddenly, at 10:23, the destroyer HMS Stuart urgently reported new contacts looming out of the darkness, just 2 miles away. Catania had arrived, the destroyer Alfieri leading the cruisers Zara and Fiume, with 3 more destroyers following behind. The Italians were totally oblivious to the presence of the British, since none of their ships were fitted with radar. On sighting the new ships, Cunningham swung the fleet around as if it were a group of destroyers, slotting back into a single line and training its guns on the new contacts. At 10:27, the destroyer Greyhound snapped open its searchlights. An instant later, Warspite and Valiant opened fire together, the lead ship from less than 3,000 yards. It was point-blank range. 15-inch shells smashed into the Fiume, setting her ablaze and blowing her rear 8-inch turret clean over the side of the ship. Formidable swung out of the British line, having no place in a close-quarters gun battle, and was replaced by Barham, which scored hits on Alfieri and then joined Warspite and Valiant in pummeling Catania's flagship Zara. Zara was then hit by 14 15-inch salvos in a matter of minutes. The Italian ships were taken totally by surprise, and so fierce was the British fire that none of the cruisers fired even once in return. At 10:31, the 3 undamaged Italian destroyers mounted a valiant counterattack, driving at the battleships and forcing them to turn away to avoid torpedoes. The onslaught had lasted for just 4 minutes. Cunningham now detached his 4 escorting destroyers to finish off the crippled Italian cruisers and steamed north. A confused melee with guns and torpedoes between the British and Italian destroyers followed, as the remnants of Catania's squadron tried to escape. Devastated by fires, the destroyer Alfieri and cruiser Fiume both sank at around 11:15, and were followed by the destroyer Carducci 15 minutes later, sunk by gunfire from HMS Havoc. The other 2 Italian cruisers remained stubbornly afloat until Captain Mack's destroyers arrived at around 2 AM, fresh from their earlier failed pursuit of Aquino's battle fleet. After picking survivors up from both ships, Zara was sunk at 2:40 AM and Pola at 4:03 by torpedoes from HMS Jervis. This brought the Battle of Cape Matapan to an end. In a battle that lasted scarcely for 4 minutes, the Italian Navy had seen an entire heavy cruiser division wiped out, along with 2 destroyers and more than 2,400 sailors, including Vice Admiral Catania. The sum total of British losses was 3 aircrew and a single Albacore torpedo bomber. It was a crushing defeat for the Italians that destroyed their confidence in any future offensive operations. It ensured Allied convoys would pass through the Med untroubled by Axis naval forces, preventing thousands of troops being stuck in Greece when the campaign there collapsed in a few short weeks' time. As for Greece, if you want to know what happened there, we'll be covering that very soon. This video is sponsored by CuriosityStream. CuriosityStream is home to a lot of documentaries. There's something for everyone on there. You might like Apocalypse World War II, which is a series of documentaries charting the overall course of the Second World War from beginning to end. It provides a good overview and may get you interested in parts of the war that you hadn't previously thought about. You can get unlimited access to CuriosityStream for $2.99 a month or just $11.99 a year as part of the Stay In, Stay Curious promotion. The first 30 days are completely free if you sign up at curiositystream.com/historiograph and use the promo code historiograph. Thanks again to CuriosityStream for helping to make this video possible.